She walked away from her poor mechanic husband and their newborn twin girls without looking back. Years later, she returned, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. What happened in those years will leave you speechless. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a story filled with pain, hope, betrayal, love, and second chances. Hello family, welcome to Storytime Mutually. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories, like and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Jake Dawson was a simple man with a kind heart and strong hands. He worked as a mechanic in a small garage on the edge of town. His days were long, oily, and hard. But nothing made him prouder than going home to his twin baby girls, Emma and Ellie. Jake had once dreamed of building a better life with his wife, Linda. When they first married, he believed they would face the world together. They lived in a small wooden house with a leaky roof, but he filled it with laughter, love, and hope. Jake worked day and night while Linda stayed home with the twins. Or, at least, that was the plan. As time passed, Linda grew unhappy. She hated the sound of wrenches and engines. She hated the way Jake smelled like grease. She hated how they had to count coins to buy bread and milk. Most of all, she hated feeling like life was passing her by. "Jake," she said one evening, arms crossed, "this isn't the life I signed up for." Jake paused while warming milk for the babies. "I know it's hard now, but I'm working on getting a better job. I'm even talking to a friend about opening our own garage." Linda rolled her eyes. "That will take years. I don't want to grow old in this falling-apart house. I want a real life. A better life." Jake looked at her, his voice soft. "What about Emma and Ellie? Don't they matter more than all of that?" Linda didn't answer. That night, while Jake was sleeping beside the girls, Linda quietly packed a small suitcase. She didn't kiss them goodbye. She didn't leave a note. By sunrise, she was gone. Jake woke up to crying. The babies were hungry. He rushed to the kitchen and called out, "Linda, could you warm the bottles while I change them?" No answer. He checked every room. Panic rose in his chest. The wardrobe was open. Her clothes were missing. Her phone was left on the table. Jake sank to the floor, heart pounding, arms wrapped around the twins. "She's gone." His heart broke that day, but he didn't have the luxury to grieve for long. The girls needed him. There were diapers to change, bottles to make, and bills to pay. That morning, Jake wrapped the twins in blankets, placed them in an old stroller, and pushed them to the garage where he worked. His boss frowned. "Jake, you can't bring babies here." Jake begged, "Please. I have no one else. Just let them stay in the office while I work. I'll bring their food. I'll clean after them." It wasn't easy, but Jake made it work. During lunch breaks, he sang lullabies. During repairs, he peeked through the window to check if they were safe. His coworkers watched in silence, some with pity, others with admiration. He had no nanny, no help, and no time for rest. But he had love. That love gave him strength. Linda, meanwhile, had boarded a train to another city. She moved in with a rich man who promised her gold and comfort. She tried to forget Jake and the twins. But at night, she couldn't sleep. The image of their tiny faces haunted her dreams. Jake didn't know where she had gone. He called her family, but no one spoke to him. So he stopped asking. He stopped expecting. He simply moved on, with 2 baby girls and a heart full of pain. But deep within that pain lived the seed of something unbreakable. Jake Dawson never imagined he would raise twin daughters all by himself. The days were long, and the nights were even longer. The cries, the fevers, the mess, it was all on him now. But Jake never gave up. Each morning, before the sun rose, Jake would dress little Emma and Ellie in second-hand clothes he had washed by hand the night before. He'd wrap them in soft blankets, then carry one in each arm to the garage down the street. The townspeople watched, whispering. Some pitied him, some judged. But Jake kept walking, head high, heart heavy. At the garage, he set up a small space in the office. He brought a playpen, old toys, and a radio to play lullabies. During repairs, he checked on them constantly. Sometimes he worked with one arm while rocking a baby with the other. The girls grew up hearing the sound of engines and hammers. But more than that, they grew up feeling their father's quiet love. But Jake wasn't made of stone. One night, after putting the twins to sleep, he sat alone in the kitchen. The lights were dim, the room cold. He stared at their baby bottles on the counter, then lowered his head and cried. Not loud, just slow, steady tears. Tears he had hidden all day. I'm trying, Linda, he whispered. I don't know if I'm enough, but I'm trying. No one heard him. No one came. But the next morning, he wiped his tears and got back to work, because his daughters needed him to be strong. As the years passed, Emma and Ellie grew into smart, curious little girls. At 5 years old, they were already learning how to read. They didn't have fancy clothes or new toys, but they had their father's stories at bedtime, his warm hugs before school, and his homemade pancakes every Sunday morning. Jake celebrated every tiny achievement: Emma's first spelling test, Ellie's first drawing, their first bicycle ride. He cheered the loudest at every school concert, always standing in the back because his boots were muddy and his hands rough with grease. Still, some people whispered cruel things. Poor kids, their mother ran off. I heard Jake's wife left him for a rich man. Those girls are growing up in a garage. Jake heard it all, but he said nothing. He just smiled at his girls, combed their hair each morning, and walked them to school with pride. And yet, no matter how much he gave, the pain never fully left. One night, Ellie crawled into his bed. Her voice was small. Daddy, why don't we have a mommy? Jake froze. The question pierced deeper than any tool in his garage. He pulled her close, heartbreaking all over again. Some mommies leave, sweetheart. But not all love disappears. Some just get lost. Will she come back? Emma asked from the doorway. Jake held both girls close. Maybe one day. But even if she doesn't, you'll always have me. I'm never leaving. And that night, as the rain tapped gently against the windows, the three of them fell asleep in each other's arms, poor in money, but rich in love. The rain had stopped by morning, but Jake's heart still carried the weight of his daughter's questions. He knew they would ask again one day, when they were older, when they could understand more. But for now, he gave them all the love he could, hoping it would be enough to cover the missing piece in their lives. Time moved fast. Emma and Ellie were now 12 years old. They were no longer the tiny babies Jake once carried in his arms. Emma was thoughtful and calm, always reading and asking questions. Ellie was full of energy, always helping her father at the garage, wiping tools, passing screws, and giggling when she wore his oversized cap. Jake had aged. His once black hair had patches of gray. His hands were rough, his back ached often, and his eyes looked tired. But every time he saw his girls smile, he felt young again. The garage didn't make him rich, but it kept food on the table. He cooked simple meals: rice, beans, pancakes, and sometimes soup from the vegetables people gave him as thanks for small repairs. The house was still small, but it was clean and filled with laughter. One evening, after closing the garage, Jake returned home to find Ellie scrubbing the kitchen floor and Emma setting the table. You girls are up to something, he joked. Emma smiled. We just wanted to say, thank you, Daddy. Jake looked confused. For what? Ellie hugged him tightly. For everything. For never leaving. For loving us double. Jake's eyes filled with tears, but he quickly wiped them. You don't have to thank me. You too are my world. That night, after dinner, Jake opened a small box hidden in his drawer. Inside were tiny photos of the girls, old letters he had written but never sent, and a wrinkled wedding photo, him and Linda, smiling once upon a time. He stared at the picture for a long time, then closed the box. I forgave you a long time ago, Linda, he whispered. But I wish you could see them now. They're amazing. Meanwhile, in a city far away, Linda sat alone in a luxury apartment. Her life was full of gold and diamonds, but her heart was empty. The man she left Jake for had been kind for a while. But when the money changed, so did he. Linda had no children around her. No laughter. No little hands to hold. Just silence. One night, she opened an old album and stared at the only photo she had of her twins, taken when they were babies. A sharp pain hit her chest. I wonder what they look like now, she whispered. I wonder if they hate me. She got up, walked to her laptop, and typed Jake Dawson's name. It had been 14 years, but it was time. Back in the small town, Jake was getting ready for bed when the phone rang. Hello. A woman's voice shook on the other end. Jake, it's me. Linda. Jake froze. The room went silent. His heart dropped. Jake stared at the phone in his hand, his heart racing. He had never expected this call. For years, Linda had been a ghost in their lives. And now, after so long, she was back. Linda, why now? Why after all this time? Jake asked, his voice shaking with confusion and a mix of anger. I know it's too late, she said softly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need to see them. I need to know they're okay. Jake sat down, his mind racing. He didn't know what to say. All these years, he had built a life without her. He had protected their daughters from the pain she caused, and now she wanted to return? Why didn't you come back before? You had the chance, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. I was selfish. I was wrong, Linda admitted, her voice cracking. I thought money could fill the emptiness inside me. But it didn't. It only made me feel more alone. Jake didn't answer right away. His mind was filled with images of his girls, how much they had grown, how much they needed him. He had kept them strong, kept them safe, but this was different. This was their mother. Finally, he spoke. I'll talk to them, but I can't promise they'll want to meet you. Linda's voice cracked. I understand. I don't expect anything from them. I just want to know that they're okay. I want them to know I'm sorry. Jake ended the call and sat in silence for a long time. His hands shook as he thought about how to explain this to his daughters. His life had been centered around protecting them from the hurt of their mother's absence. Now, that hurt was coming back in the form of a phone call. When the girls came home from school that afternoon, Jake was sitting at the kitchen table, his face serious.
Daddy.
Ellie asked, noticing his expression. What's wrong? Jake took a deep breath, his voice soft. Girls, your mother called me today. Emma's face went pale. Mom? Jake nodded slowly. She wants to see you. She wants to apologize. Ellie frowned, her eyes filled with confusion. But why now? Why after all these years? I don't know, Jake admitted. But she says she's sorry. Emma and Ellie exchanged glances. They had been angry with their mother for leaving them. They had lived with that hurt for so long, and the thought of her coming back was overwhelming. I don't know if I'm ready to see her, Emma said quietly, her voice trembling. What if she just leaves again? Ellie looked up at Jake. What do we do, Dad? Jake's heart ached. He wanted to protect them from more pain, but he also wanted them to have the answers they deserved. We don't have to meet her if you don't want to, he said softly. But if you decide to, I'll be right there with you. The girls were quiet for a long time, the weight of the decision hanging heavily between them. Finally, Ellie spoke. I don't know if I'm ready either. But maybe we should at least hear her out. She's our mom. Jake nodded, relief flooding through him. We'll do it together. Whatever happens, we're a family. Later that evening, Jake called Linda back. We'll meet you tomorrow, he said, his voice steady. But only for a little while. Linda's voice was filled with gratitude. Thank you, Jake. I promise I won't make this harder for you or for them. The next day, Jake, Emma, and Ellie drove to the small cafe in town where Linda had asked to meet. It wasn't a big, fancy place. It was simple and warm, like the town itself. As they walked in, Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He wasn't sure what to expect, but the sight of Linda sitting alone at a table made everything feel surreal. She was older, her hair darker than he remembered, but her eyes still held the same sadness, the same loneliness. When Linda saw them, her face softened, and she stood up slowly. I never thought this day would come, she said, her voice filled with emotion. Jake looked at his daughters. They were nervous, but they didn't run away. They stayed by his side. Emma stepped forward first, her voice quiet but clear. "Why did you leave us?" Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I was wrong. I thought I could give you everything you needed without being there for you. But I was selfish. And I'm sorry. I never stopped thinking about you too." Ellie didn't say anything at first. Instead, she stared at her mother, the pain from years of silence still fresh in her eyes. Finally, she spoke. "Did you ever love us?" Her voice cracked. Linda wiped away a tear. "With all my heart." The room was still, heavy with the weight of unspoken words. Jake looked at his daughters. They were listening. They were thinking. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," Linda said, her voice breaking. "I just wanted you to know. I love you. And I'm sorry." Jake stepped in. "We've all been through a lot. I don't know what happens next, but we'll figure it out together." And as the three of them sat at that small table, the weight of the past began to lift, little by little. They weren't sure what the future would hold, but they knew one thing. They had each other. The meeting with Linda wasn't easy, but it was a start. The silence that followed was uncomfortable, and the questions lingered in the air, but for the first time in years, the Dawson family felt like they were taking steps forward, together. Over the next few days, Jake noticed a change in his daughters. They were quieter, lost in their thoughts, but they weren't as angry anymore. Emma, always the thoughtful one, spent hours in her room reading, thinking. Ellie, more active and outspoken, began asking questions about their mother, things she had never asked before. "Dad," Ellie asked one evening as they sat together after dinner, "do you think Mom will really stay this time?" Jake looked at his daughter, the same one who used to run around the garage, asking for her mother. He had never given her an answer before, but now, as he looked into her innocent eyes, he realized he had to. "I don't know, sweetie," Jake replied honestly. "I can't promise you that. But what I can promise is that no matter what happens, I will always be here for you. Nothing will change that." Ellie nodded, though she still seemed unsure. Emma, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke. "I'm trying to understand, Dad," she said softly. "I don't know if I'm ready to let her back into our lives, but maybe we can try." Jake smiled gently, pulling them both into a hug. "That's all we can do, try. And we'll take it one day at a time." The following week, Linda reached out to them again. This time, it wasn't a surprise. Jake had expected it, and so had his daughters. She wanted to meet them again, to talk more. But this time, she didn't ask for forgiveness. She simply wanted to show them that she was trying to make things right. The second meeting was at Jake's garage. Linda had insisted that she wanted to see where her daughters had grown up. At first, Jake was reluctant, but then he realized it was important for her to understand the life they had lived without her. When Linda arrived, the garage was just as it had always been, a place filled with the smell of oil, grease, and tools. But now it felt different. Linda was here, standing in the same place where Jake had worked day and night to provide for their family. She looked around, her eyes soft and full of emotion. "I never thought this was how you all would live," she said, her voice shaking. Jake stayed quiet, watching her carefully. Emma and Ellie stood by his side, unsure of what to say. "It's not glamorous," Jake said quietly, "but it's ours. We've made it work." Linda nodded slowly, then turned to the girls. "I've made so many mistakes, and I can't change what I did. But if you'll let me, I want to make up for it. I want to be part of your lives again." Ellie, always the more outspoken one, spoke first. "But how can we trust you? You left us. We've been okay without you." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I hurt you, and I can never take that back. But I can show you that I'm here to stay. If you'll let me, I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I love you." Emma took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I'm not sure if I can forgive you yet, but I'm willing to try. I want to know who you are now. Maybe we can build something new together." Jake watched his daughters, feeling a mix of pride and relief. This wasn't going to be easy, but they were taking the first steps toward healing. Over the next few months, Linda made more efforts to be involved in Emma and Ellie's lives. She didn't expect everything to be fixed overnight, and neither did they. There were awkward moments, times when the past would resurface, but there were also small moments of progress. Linda attended the girls' school events, helped with their homework, and even cooked dinner for them a few times. For the first time in years, the Dawson family felt like they were whole again. Jake still worked long hours at the garage, but now, when he came home, there was someone waiting for him, a wife who, although she couldn't undo the past, was trying to create a future with them. And for the first time in a long time, Jake began to believe that maybe things could be different. Maybe, just maybe, this was a chance at a new beginning. One evening, as the family sat together around the dinner table, Jake looked around at his daughters and Linda. His heart was full, though the road ahead still seemed long. "Thank you," Jake said, his voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for giving me a chance to fix what I didn't even know I needed to fix." Ellie smiled, her eyes still holding a trace of uncertainty, but there was hope there now. "We're trying too, Dad. It's not perfect, but we're doing it together." Linda reached across the table and took Jake's hand. "We'll make it work. I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, Jake knew that no matter how long it took, no matter how many more challenges they would face them together. Because family wasn't just about being together when things were easy, it was about sticking together when things were hard. They had a long way to go, but for the first time in many years, they were moving forward as one. And that was enough. It had been several months since Linda had come back into their lives, and though the journey hadn't been easy, it was starting to feel like they were moving in the right direction. The tension that once hung over their home had begun to fade, replaced with small moments of hope and healing. The girls had slowly started to trust Linda again, but it wasn't instant. Emma, who had always been more reserved, was still cautious. She spent more time with her mother, asking questions and getting to know her as an adult, but she wasn't ready to open up completely. Ellie, on the other hand, had a softer heart. She was quicker to forgive, quicker to give Linda a second chance. She often pulled Linda into her world of games and laughter, showing her the little things that had filled the empty spaces in their lives. Jake watched it all from the sidelines, sometimes feeling like a quiet observer in his own family. He was happy to see his daughters growing stronger, learning how to forgive, but it wasn't easy for him either. His heart was still torn. He loved Linda, but part of him was afraid of being hurt again, afraid that the peace they had found would be shattered. The memories of the past were always just below the surface, waiting to resurface at the wrong moment. One evening, as the family sat together in the living room, watching TV and talking about their day, Linda turned to Jake. "I know it hasn't been perfect, but I'm glad we're trying," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "I know I can't undo what happened, but I'm here now, and I'm going to keep trying. I want to be part of your lives for real this time." Jake smiled at her, the warmth in his chest growing. "I'm glad, too. It's not easy, but nothing worth having ever is. We've made it this far because we've been honest with each other. We just need to keep doing that." Linda reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm not going anywhere. This time I mean it." The words felt like a promise that, no matter the struggles, they would face them together. And for Jake, that was enough for now. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The next few weeks brought more positive changes. Linda found a job at a local boutique, something she had always wanted to do. It wasn't a glamorous position, but she was determined to contribute. She also started volunteering at the local community center, helping with after-school programs for other children. She wasn't the same woman she had been years ago. She had changed. And though Jake was still cautious, he could see it. One afternoon, as Linda and Jake sat on the porch, sipping coffee, they talked about the future. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't left?" Linda asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake stared at the sky, thinking about the question. "I think about it sometimes. What would have happened if you hadn't left? If we hadn't gone through all that pain? I think we would have had a different life. But I also know that we're here now, and we can't change the past. All we can do is move forward. Together." Linda nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. "I'm sorry for everything. I wish I could change it all." Jake put his hand on hers. "I've forgiven you, Linda. It doesn't mean we forget, but it means we're not stuck in the past anymore. We can build something new, and that's what matters. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of laughter from the girls. Emma and Ellie were running around in the yard, playing a game of tag. For the first time in a long time, Jake watched them with a full heart. They were happy. They were okay. The road to healing hadn't been smooth. There had been moments of doubt, moments when it seemed easier to turn away from the past. But the family had chosen to stick together, to face the challenges that came their way, and to heal as a unit. And slowly but surely, they were rebuilding what had been broken. A few months later, the family sat around the dinner table, enjoying a meal together. The house was full of life, the sound of clinking plates and laughter filling the air. The girls were no longer asking why their mother had left. Instead, they were talking about school, friends, and what they wanted to do in the future. Jake looked at them and felt a deep sense of peace settle over him. This was what he had wanted all along, a family that was whole again, despite everything that had happened. They had survived the hardest part, and now they were learning to live. Linda smiled at Jake, her eyes filled with love. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." Jake reached over and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you for coming back." The house, once filled with emptiness and pain, was now full of hope and laughter. The past had not been easy, but they had survived it. And together, they would continue to build their future. And as the evening sun set, casting a warm glow over the house, Jake realized that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from forgetting the past, but from learning to forgive and moving forward together. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like and comment what you feel about the story under the comment section. Share to friends and family. Thanks for watching.